controversy, opinion, point of view. This is Prime News.
I'm Carlos Diaz in for Vinny Politan. Welcome to Prime News. A potentially heartbreaking development from the fallout of the Penn State sex scandal. There are reports that one of Jerry Sandusky's alleged victims has been bullied out of school, and as a result, he had to leave school in the middle of his senior year. The family psychologist of victim one says the teen was called names and verbally threatened because students blame him for Penn State head coach Joe Paterno being fired. All right, people of Pennsylvania, listen up. This is your chance to walk the walk. You've been talking the talk about how victims are the most important people in this controversy, but the first chance you get, you run victim one out of town. I don't want to hear about this being the small minority of people acting up against victim one, because if the so-called majority rose up and supported him at that high school, he wouldn't have had to drop out of school to avoid further persecution. Never mind the fact that he's already allegedly suffered some of the most horrific physical and mental abuse any child should ever have to go through. Joining me now is doctor of psychology and co-host of The Doctors, Wendy Walsh. Also with me is former police detective Steve Kardian, and from the Penn State campus, Patriot News reporter and HLN contributor Sarah Ganem. Sarah, you broke the story. First off, Sarah, what are you just baffled by the fact that victim one was run out of school, and what else can you tell us about this story?
Well, it's a pretty sad story. His psychologist says that basically the bullying was getting to be too much, the name calling was getting to be too much, and, you know, not even halfway through the school year, his senior year, he had to change schools because he couldn't take it anymore. And this is a kid who, you know, he's been really courageous through this whole thing. His mom is extremely proud of him. A lot of people who have looked in from the outside on this case are just incredibly, you know, proud of the courage that he had. And he knows that. There is some hope here. There is a good angle to this story because he realizes that what he did helped a lot of other victims, not just in this case, but also outside this case, come forward and confront their abuse and confront their abusers and report what happened to them in many different situations. So he sees the good in that, but at the same time, he lives in a small town. He's been outed, and he's been the subject of some very derogatory name-calling, some really harsh abuse from his peers.
Let's take a look real quick at the grand jury report and the allegations made against Jerry Sandusky related to victim number one.
Victim one testified that he was 11 or 12 years old when he met Sandusky. Victim one testified that Sandusky had a practice of coming into the basement room after he told victim one that it was time to go to bed. Victim one testified that Sandusky would crack his back. The back cracking became a ritual at bedtime. Victim one said that after Sandusky had cracked his back a number of times, he progressed to rubbing victim one's backside while they lay face to face on the bed. Eventually, Sandusky began to kiss victim one on the mouth. Victim one testified that ultimately Sandusky performed oral sex on him more than 20 times. Sandusky also had victim one perform oral sex on him one time.
My panel back with us right now, Steve Kardian. How hard, Steve, is this going to be to truly conduct an investigation without school officials getting involved? It seems to me like the school officials will have to be involved in some way.
Yeah, Vinny, they couldn't have picked a greater man with greater integrity, but there's going to be some limitations. He's not going to have legal powers. He's not going to have subpoena powers, which he may need in order to do an effective investigation. And to my understanding, Penn State is funding this, so he's being paid by the university. If anybody can be impartial and fair, he's going to be. This good old boy network has to be broken up. And I've got to mention something important. I'm a part of a collaborative effort with PAVE and Security on Campus, and there's going to be a National Day of Action on November 30th to address this, and you can find information on it on shatteringthesilence.org.
Take your time with that. Say that again. Say that again. Don't speed through that.
Shatteringthesilence.org. A National Day of Action to address this very issue of what's hidden on college campuses, the good old network that is preventing victims from coming forward, and it's just horrible. The victim you spoke about, victim number one, has been re-victimized again, and he will continue to be so throughout his life.
Yeah, I want to go out to Wendy Walsh real quick. Wendy, I've been hearing you. I watched Special Report last hour, and you know, I heard what you had to say about the victims. I want to get, because you're a doctor of psychology, I want to get into the mind of people who may want to go to Penn State, not wanting to go now when they hear this kind of behavior toward a victim, an alleged victim, who should be treated as a hero. Instead, they're being run out of their high school. Wendy, this cannot be a good thing for Penn State University.
I mean, let's face it, this is it was very uncomfortable for me to even hear that grand jury report again. It's uncomfortable stuff to talk about. But guess what, people? It's because it's so uncomfortable to talk about that these cultures exist that protect and hide these crimes and create more and more victims. Now, as to the mindset of somebody considering Penn State as a university, who wants to even have that certificate on their diploma with the name after this? It's tainted the university and the town, and for a very long time, they're going to have to work to uphold these victims. You know, earlier Jane Velez-Mitchell called them survivors, and I would prefer to call them survivors from now on.
Now,
because these young boys...
I know, and I agree. And what you're saying about survivors, that's the thing. We saw the pictures. We saw the carnage when Joe Paterno was fired, you know, people turning over trucks. And then on Friday, 2 days after that, we have students holding candles and saying, oh, the victims are the main thing here. Guess what? Penn State, the people at State College, you have failed again because you weren't there for victim number one. Victim number one had to check out, had to leave high school because you can't handle the fact that victim one spoke out and your beloved coach got canned. And now listen, and I've got friends who have said to me this week, dude, I can't believe you're covering this Penn State thing like you're doing because you guys don't know sports. Guess what? I grew up with Penn State football all over my life. I understand who Joe Paterno is. I understand the impact that he's had since 1950 on college sports. But how many great things do you need to do to be excused for turning your head, allegedly, to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 really, really, really terrible things? And that's the thing. If that's the case, you cannot defend Joe Paterno in this case.
Controversy, opinion, point of view.